Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something I've learned the hard way. Prayer works, but only if you trust it. See, too many people pray, they're placing an order at a drive-through. Lord, I need this, and I need it fast. Then, when it doesn't show up by tomorrow morning, they think God didn't hear them. But prayer doesn't work on your timing. It works on God's timing. Let me tell you something straight from the heart. Prayer is the foundation of faith. It's the base, the anchor, the first brick you lay before you build anything else in your spiritual life. See, faith without prayer is like trying to drive a car with no gas. You might have the keys, you might have the car, you might even be sitting in the driver's seat, but you ain't going nowhere without fuel. And prayer, my friends, that's your fuel. That's what keeps your faith alive and moving forward. Prayer is not something fancy or complicated. It's not about the perfect words or sounding holy. It's your direct line to God. A real conversation, heart to heart. It's not about religion, it's about relationship. You don't need a microphone or a cathedral to talk to God. You can be in your car, in your kitchen, or standing in line at the grocery store. Wherever you are, God hears you. You just got to open your mouth, or even whisper in your heart, Lord, I need you. Now let me tell you what I've learned over the years. When you truly understand that connects you directly to the creator of the universe, you start to realize how powerful that is. You got a direct number to heaven. You don't need to go through an operator. You don't need to send an email or wait for approval. You can go straight to the source. You got access to power that no man can give you and no man can take away. But see, here's the thing. A lot of folks treat prayer like it's their last resort instead of their first response. They try everything else first. They call their friends, they Google solutions, they stress, they cry, they panic, and then finally they go, well, all I can do now is pray. Like prayer is the leftover option when everything else failed. Nah, that's backward. Prayer should be the first thing you do. It's not plan B. It's plan A, because when you start with prayer, you're not reacting to the problem. You're aligning yourself with the one who already has the solution. Prayer builds your faith because it reminds you who's in charge. It shifts your focus from the problem to the problem solver. When you pray, you're saying, God, I can't do this on my own. I need your help. And there's power in that kind of surrender. That's when faith kicks in. Because prayer without faith is just words. But prayer with faith, that's when mountains move. I remember one time early in my career, I was broke and struggling. I didn't know how I was going to make it. I was doing comedy shows that barely paid enough to get me gas money. There were nights I slept in my car, parked at rest stops, wondering if I made the wrong decision chasing this dream. But every night I prayed. I didn't have a fancy prayer. I just said, God, please don't leave me like this. I know you didn't bring me this far just to leave me here. That was it. Simple, honest, straight from the heart. And you know what? God heard me. Not instantly, not the next morning, but over time, doors started to open that I never could have opened on my own. That's what prayer does. It connects you to possibilities that don't make sense on paper. See, when you pray, you're building your trust muscle. Every time you pray, you're saying, Lord, I believe you can handle this. You may not know how or when, but that act of praying is an act of believing. You can't have faith if you never talk to the one you're supposed to have faith in. That's like being in a relationship with somebody but never speaking to them. Prayer keeps your faith alive because it keeps the communication open. And you don't have to pray long for it to be powerful. You just have to pray sincerely. Some of the strongest prayers I've ever prayed were just a few words. Lord, help me. Lord, guide me. Lord, I trust you. You don't have to shout for God to hear you. He listens to the whisper, the tear, the sigh. He knows what's on your heart, even when you can't find the words to say it. That's the beauty of prayer. It's not about performance, it's about presence. Now, let's talk real for a second. Sometimes you pray, and it feels like nothing's happening. You pray, and things still look the same. And that's when the doubt creeps in. You start thinking, maybe God didn't hear me. Maybe my prayers don't work. But let me tell you, silence doesn't mean absence. Just that you don't see something moving doesn't mean nothing's happening. When you pray, God starts working in the background, rearranging things, setting things up, preparing people, preparing you. You can't see it yet because it's not time for the curtain to rise. But trust me, behind that curtain, God is working overtime. Prayer is like planting a seed. You don't see the harvest the next morning. You gotta water it, wait for the sunlight, and trust that something's happening underground. Faith is that waiting period between when you pray, when you see results. It's not easy, but it's necessary. That's how God grows your patience, your character, your gratitude. And the beautiful thing about prayer is, it's not always about asking for something. Sometimes prayer is just saying thank you. Sometimes it's just talking to God about your day. Lord, I don't even need anything right now. I just wanted to say I appreciate you. That's prayer too, because when you stay in that constant connection, it changes your attitude. You start seeing blessings in places used to overlook. You start feeling peace in situations that used to stress you out. That's what happens when prayer becomes part of who you are, not just something you do when life gets hard. Let me give you a truth that changed my life. Prayer doesn't always change your situation right away, but it will always change you. It strengthens you, calms you, and keeps you grounded. You might walk into prayer heavy and come out lighter. The situation might not shift yet, but your spirit does. That's how you know prayer is working, when prayer becomes your foundation. No storm can shake you completely. You might bend, but you won't break. Because you know that no matter how crazy life gets, you've got a direct line to the one who created it all. You've got backup that never runs out. And once you really understand that, you stop stressing so much. You stop worrying about what you can't control. You start living with a quiet confidence because you know you're connected to something greater. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me remind you once more. Prayer is the foundation. Without it, faith crumbles. With it, you can stand tall in any storm. Don't underestimate the power of just talking to God. He hears every word, He knows every tear, and He honors every bit of faith that keeps you on your knees when the world tries to knock you down. Because prayer, that's your power, that's your peace, and that's your direct line to heaven. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that most people struggle with. Trusting your prayer, even when you can't see the results. That's the real test of faith. It's easy to believe. When everything's going your way, when the doors are opening, when the checks are coming in, and when people are clapping for you. But it's a whole different thing when you've been praying, believing doing right, and still nothing seems to be happening. That's when faith gets real. That's when you find out whether you just know how to pray or whether you actually know how to trust what you prayed for. A lot of folks think everything is going to go smooth, but that's not true. Faith is trusting God when nothing makes sense. Faith is waking up every morning saying, God, I still believe you got me. Even when it looks like you're losing, that's real trust. That's what separates people who talk about faith from people who walk by faith. See, when you pray, you plant a seed. But after you plant it, you can't see what's going on underground. You don't know when it's going to break through the soil. You just have to believe that something's happening under the surface. Most people lose faith in that between time, the waiting season. They dig up the seed to check on it, saying, God, are you sure you heard me? But trust means you leave that seed in the ground, water it with gratitude, and believe it's going to grow in due time. Now, let me be real with you. There have been so many times in my life when I prayed and didn't see anything change. I remember a point in my career when I was trying to get on television. I had been doing stand-up comedy for years, traveling from club to club, sleeping in cars, sometimes not even having enough gas money to get to the next gig. I prayed, Lord, please open a door for me. I just need one shot. Days went by. Weeks went by. When I kept praying, I didn't know when it was going to happen, but I believed it would. Then one day, out of nowhere, I got a phone call that changed my life. Somebody had seen one of my old comedy tapes and wanted me to audition for a TV show. That opportunity was the turning point, but it didn't show up the day I prayed for it. It showed up when I was ready for it. And that's how God works. Sometimes He won't give you what you ask for right away, not because He doesn't hear you, but because He's preparing you for what you prayed for. When you trust your prayer, you have to accept that God's timing is not your timing. You might think you're ready, but He knows better. He knows the whole picture. He's not just trying to bless you. He's trying to build you. Because what good is a blessing if you don't have the strength or wisdom to keep it? That's why the waiting season exists. It's where your faith grows roots. You see, faith isn't built when everything's easy. Faith grows when you're in the dark. When you've prayed all you can, and you still don't see a thing changing. It grows when you decide to keep trusting, even though the evidence says you shouldn't. It's like when you're flying through the clouds. You can't see the ground. You can't see the horizon. But the pilot still keeps going because he trusts his instruments. That's how you have to be your prayers. Even when you can't see what's ahead, you trust the God who can. So many people quit too soon. They give up right before the breakthrough. They say, I've been praying for months, for years, and nothing's happened. Just because you can't see movement doesn't mean God isn't moving. Sometimes the biggest changes are the ones you can't see. Sometimes the miracle happening behind the scenes, in people's hearts, in conversations you're not a part of, in doors that haven't opened yet. God is setting things up piece by piece. And if you stop trusting, you stop the process. Let me tell you something I've learned the hard way. The moment you start dotting your prayers, you cancel the very thing you asked for. Because doubt and faith can't live in the same house. You can't say, God, I trust you, and then walk around all day worrying about how it's going to happen. Either you trust Him or you don't. Trust means resting even when you don't have the answer. Trust means saying, Lord, I don't see it yet, but I know you're working. That's where peace comes from. I remember when I used to call my mama crying about my situation. I'd say, Mama, I don't think it's going to happen. I've been praying and nothing's changing. And she'd say, baby, just keep trusting. You can't see what God is doing right now, but he's setting something up for you. I didn't understand it back then, but she was right. Looking back now, I realized that every no, every delay, every closed door was part of the plan. God wasn't ignoring me. He was preparing me. If he had given me everything I wanted when I asked for it, I wouldn't have been ready to handle it. Sometimes God hides the result so he can strengthen your resolve. If he showed you the whole plan, you wouldn't need faith. But he's not going to reveal everything. He wants you to walk by faith, not by sight. So when it looks like nothing's happening, that's your chance to prove that you believe what you prayed. You ever noticed that some of the strongest people you know are the ones who had to wait the longest? That's because waiting builds strength. It teaches you patience, humility, and dependence on God. You learn to stop trying to control everything and start trusting that he's in control. You learn to stop asking when and start saying, whenever you're ready, Lord. That's when real faith shows up. There's a story I tell sometimes about when I was about to give up on comedy altogether. I had prayed and worked for years, and I just wasn't seeing any results. I was broke, tired, and ready to quit. But something in me said, keep trusting. You didn't come this far just to stop now. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the Apollo Theater in New York. They wanted me to perform. That show changed everything for me. But what if I had quit 2 weeks earlier? What if I had stopped trusting my prayer because I couldn't see the results? I would have missed my blessing. You got to understand, when you pray, the answer is already on the way. It might not come in you expect, but it's coming. Sometimes it's a yes, sometimes it's a no, and sometimes it's not yet. But every answer has purpose. Trusting your prayer means believing that whatever the answer is, it's for your good. Even when the door closes, trust that God's protecting you from something you can't see. Sometimes rejection is just redirection. You're crying over what you lost, but God is trying to move you towards something better. When you can't see the results, remind yourself of what he's already done. Think about the times he's brought you through before. That's how you build trust, by remembering his track record. If he did it once, he can do it again. God doesn't change. His promises don't expire. You just have to keep believing, even when your situation doesn't look like your prayer yet. I know people who gave up right before their blessing showed up. They stopped trusting because it took too long. But God's not in a hurry. He's eternal. He doesn't work on deadlines. He works on destiny. And if you want something that lasts, you have to give it time to develop. You can't rush what God is building. You might think the delay is punishment, but sometimes it's protection. You're asking for the blessing that he's still working on your foundation so it won't crumble when it comes. There's power in staying faithful in the unseen. That's where your character is shaped. That's where your testimony is born. People love the success story, but they don't always see the struggle behind it. The tears, the prayers, the nights you almost gave up. But those unseen moments, that's where the real strength comes from. Because when you come out on the other side, you can look back and say, I didn't see it then, but God was working all along. So when you pray, don't just talk. Trust. Trust when the bank account is empty. Trust when the doctor's report looks bad. Trust when you feel alone. Trust when you're scared. Trust when people doubt you. Because that's when God shows up the strongest. That's when his power becomes visible. He's not waiting for things to look perfect. He's waiting for you to believe even when they don't. There's something powerful about a person who can say, I don't see how, but I still believe. That's the kind of faith that moves mountains. That's the kind of trust that gets God's attention. Because when you refuse to give up, when you keep believing in the dark, you're the show in heaven that your faith isn't based on circumstances. It's based on confidence in the one who can change them. I've seen miracles happen not because people prayed longer or louder, but because they trusted harder. They refused to give up. They kept thanking God, even when they didn't have the answer yet. That's the key. Gratitude during the waiting season is the proof of real trust. Anybody can thank God after the blessing shows up, but real faith thanks him before it arrives. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're in that place where you've been praying and it feels like nothing's changing, I want you to remember this. You don't have to see it to believe it. You just have to believe it to see it. That's how faith works. The vision in your heart is the preview of what God is preparing. It might take time. It might look impossible, but trust that he's faithful. Your prayer didn't disappear. It's developing. It's working its way through the process, and one day it'll show up in your life exactly when it's supposed to. So keep praying, keep believing, keep trusting. Even when you can't see the results, know that your faith is not wasted. Every tear, every prayer, every sleepless night, God saw it. And he's working it all together for your good. Because trusting your prayer means you already know, even in the dark, that the light is coming. Ladies and gentlemen, I wanted something that every single one of us has struggled with at some point in life. Waiting. See, nobody likes to wait. We live in a world where everything's instant. You can order food on your phone and have it at your door in minutes. You can click a button and watch a whole season of a show. You can post a picture and get likes in seconds. So when it comes to prayer, when it comes to God's timing, waiting feels uncomfortable. But what I've learned over the years is this: just because it's delayed doesn't mean it's denied. God is not saying no. To you, he's often just saying, not yet. And that's the hardest thing to accept, because when you're praying, you want results. You want things to move. You want doors to open. But God doesn't operate on your schedule. He's not checking your clock. He's working on his own timeline, and his timing is always perfect, even when you don't understand it. That delay that frustrates you, that's not punishment, it's preparation. It's not denial, it's development. Let me tell you something from my own life. Years ago, when I first started doing stand-up comedy, I thought success would come fast. I thought I'd be on TV, making big money, and living my dream within a year or two. But man, that didn't happen. I struggled for a long time. I lived out of my car for 3 years. 3 years? There were nights I cried myself to sleep, asking God, why is this taking so long? Why can't it happen now? But during that delay, I learned something. I learned humility. I learned patience. I learned how to handle failure, how to keep going when it hurts. I learned how to depend on God and not on people. And when the blessing finally came, if it had come earlier, I would have ruined it. I wouldn't have appreciated it. I wasn't mature enough yet. But God knew that. That's why he made me wait. See, that's what delays do. They build character. They strengthen your faith. They prepare you for what's coming. Everybody wants the blessing, but not everybody wants the process that comes before it. Because the process takes time. It takes pain. It takes discipline. And God uses the time to shape you into the kind of person who can handle what you've been praying for. Sometimes you're praying for something big. A dream, a relationship, a breakthrough. And God says, I hear you, but you're not ready yet. That doesn't mean he won't give it to you. It just means he's getting you ready, and he's getting it ready. The blessing has to be in the R.